Today we take a look at the geography, people, and history of Palestine. A land steeped in history and culture, theirs is a story that needs to be told. What this video is not about is who was right and who was wrong in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There are countless videos about that. Of course, it's impossible to mention one without the other, so we will explore their relationship in different sections, free of bias and judgment. In this episode, you will learn answers to the following questions and so much more. Where in Palestine can you find the lowest land-based elevation on Earth? What world-famous historical figure was born in present-day Palestine? Which groups of people have controlled the region of Palestine since the beginning of time? And what's the Dabke, and when do people do it? We'll be dancing all over to find the answers to these questions and so much more. Stay tuned to learn all about this small yet significant land, starting with its geography. The land that is currently claimed by the state of Palestine is made up of two disconnected areas, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Throughout much of history, the region also included the land that makes up present-day Israel. That will certainly be explained later in the episode. Known worldwide for their conflicts with Israel, the Gaza Strip is the smaller of the two. Gaza resides on the Mediterranean Sea and borders Egypt to the south and Israel to the north and east. Gaza is 25 miles long and ranges from 3.5 to 7.5 miles wide. In land comparison, it's about twice the size of Washington, D.C., or a quarter of the size of London. Luckily, much of the land is arable, as the people of Gaza are not free to come and go. Often described as the world's largest open-air prison, the Mediterranean provides food and entertainment so long as you don't venture out too far. Israeli naval ships have been blockading the Gazan shore since 2009. Further isolating the area, Israel built a fence along its border with Gaza in 1994 and has upgraded the barrier several times since, including an anti-tunnel barrier wall between the two, which was completed in 2021. The larger of the two Palestinian territories is the West Bank, though it isn't large itself. In land comparison, it's slightly smaller than the state of Delaware, the second smallest state in the U.S. and my home. The West Bank is bordered by Jordan to the east and by Israel to the south, west, and north. Like Gaza, the West Bank is completely walled off from Israel. In terms of interesting geographical features, the West Bank borders the Dead Sea. At 1,412 feet below sea level, its shores are the lowest land-based elevation on Earth. With a salinity of 34.2%, it's also one of the saltiest bodies of water on the planet. Too salty for most forms of life, which makes it dead. Palestine is home to 4 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, including the Land of Olives and Vines cultural landscape of southern Jerusalem. Near the village of Batir in the Central Highlands, the landscape features cultivated valleys called Whittian, identified by their iconic stone terraces. And added to the UNESCO list in 2023 is the ancient city of Jericho. Dating back 11,000 years, it's one of the oldest cities on Earth and home to the world's oldest known defensive wall. Of course, the addition of this World Heritage Site caused a stir between Israel and Palestine, a disagreement that surprised no one. But if you would like to be surprised by the wonderful things that this global community has to offer, please hit the subscribe button and like the video. It doesn't cost a thing. So what comes from Palestine? We'll be exploring just that in the next segment. The Palestinian region is the birthplace of two of the world's major religions, Judaism and Christianity. Adding to the intrigue, many of the historical events of these religions happened in present-day Palestine, especially in the West Bank. Judaism traces its beginnings to the covenant between God and Abraham around 1812 BC. Abraham is considered the father of the Jewish people, and his agreement with God established a special relationship and a set of obligations, 613 to be exact. According to the Torah in the Old Testament book Genesis, Abraham lived in the Mesopotamian city of Ur when he was called on by God to go to Canaan, which makes up present-day Israel and Palestine. According to the Torah, the land was to be given to Abraham and his descendants forever, an agreement Israelis point to for the creation of Israel. A fact that most don't realize is that the God of Abraham is the same God that is worshipped by followers of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Of course, they do worship this God a bit differently. Worshiping the same God would be a great reason for the religions to get along. At least I think so. A popular place of pilgrims for the Jews, Christians, and Muslims in Palestine is in the West Bank at Hebron's Old Town, which became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2017, and is home to the Cave of the Patriarchs, where Abraham and his family are believed to be buried. Today, there are around 20 million practitioners of Judaism worldwide. According to the 4 Gospels in the New Testament, Jesus of Nazareth is said to have been born in Bethlehem, a city in present-day Palestine. Though he lived much of his life in Israeli-held Nazareth, the Gospel of Luke provides a narrative where Joseph and Mary traveled to Bethlehem because of a decree decree by Caesar Augustus that a census should be taken. In 2012, the place believed to be the birth site of Jesus, the Church of the Nativity, and the pilgrimage route were all declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. After his birth, Jesus of Nazareth spent quite a bit of time in the land that is today Palestine. One place in particular was the biblical town of Bethany, today known as Al-Azariah in the West Bank. Some of the stories attributed to Jesus' time in Bethany include the interrogation of John the Baptist, the raising of Lazarus from the dead, and Jesus is leaving Bethany to travel to Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, the healing of the blind in Jericho, and possibly Jesus' resurrection appearances on the road to Emmaus. Much of the end of Jesus' life and the beginning of Christianity happened in the city of Jerusalem, a land Palestine claims but doesn't control. We will explore the questions surrounding Jerusalem near the end of the video. The Palestinian people are a group with a shared cultural and linguistic Arab identity today, but their history is complex. Originally, the Canaanites were the first inhabitants of Palestine during biblical times. Over time, they likely intermixed with various outside groups. As a result, Palestinian villagers often claim ties to Arab tribes settling in Palestine, while others trace their roots to Turkish, North African, Kurdish, Egyptian, and Turkmen origins. Some even claim Jewish or Samaritan ancestry based on oral traditions. The name Palestine was first mentioned by the Greek historian Herodotus, defining it as the coastal land from Phoenicia down to Egypt. In ancient Egypt, the name Peliset referred to a group known as the Sea People, specifically the Philistines. Throughout history, Palestine has been under the control of larger empires and caliphates. The concept of a Palestinian identity is thought to be relatively modern and didn't solidify until the early 20th century, around the same time nationalism grew in the Ottoman Empire. This coincided with Palestinian concerns about the establishment of a Jewish state on their land. Today, there are around 14 million Palestinians globally, with about 5.3 million living in the state of Palestine. The Palestinian people have faced significant displacement, especially due to the Arab-Israeli conflict and the creation of the State of Israel in 1948. Many Palestinians became refugees, and millions of their descendants continue to live in refugee camps in neighboring countries. Notable Palestinians include Yasser Arafat, a Palestinian leader, founder of the Palestine Liberation Organization, or the PLO, and a key figure in the Palestinian national movement. As PLO chairman, he advocated for Palestinian self-determination and gained international recognition. Arafat played a central role in peace negotiations, notably the Oslo Accords. Despite winning the Nobel Peace Prize in 1994, his leadership faced controversy. Edward Said was a Palestinian-American literary theorist and cultural critic, renowned for Orientalism. His work challenged Western views of the East, significantly influencing post-colonial studies. Said's legacy includes advocating for Palestinian rights. Hanan Ashrawi is a prominent Palestinian political figure and human rights advocate. Involved in Palestinian politics for decades, she has represented Palestinian interests internationally. Among the first regions in the world to experience civilization, agricultural communities developed in Palestine between 10,000 and 5,000 BC. Around 3000 BC, the area was known as Canaan. It was dominated by the Canaanites, a Semitic-speaking people who built city-states as opposed to controlling the area as a single entity. To get to more modern times, let's simplify and speed this thing up. Around 1500 BC, Canaan came under the control of ancient Egypt, who withdrew around 1200 BC. This gave smaller groups like the Israelites and Philistines the opportunity to stake claims. The area was eventually conquered by the Assyrians, who were in turn defeated by the Babylonians. Persia, under Cyrus the Great, conquered Babylon and in turn took control of Palestine. Egypt then re-entered the mix, and the area was traded back and forth with the Persians for a bit before Persia retook the area in 343 BC. That didn't last long, as Alexander the Great conquered Palestine while on his way to Egypt a few years later. Alexander's generals and successors, the Diadochi, fought over Palestine like a pack of wild hyenas until the 1st century BC, when the Romans conquered the area because they pretty much conquered everyone. The division of the Roman Empire in 286 AD placed Palestine under Byzantine until the 7th century, when the area was conquered by the Rashidun Caliphate, who introduced Islam to the region. They were under the control of several caliphates for the next few centuries until the Seljuk Turks seized power in the region for a bit. The Fatimid Empire was able to wrestle it back a few decades later, just in time for crusaders from Europe to come and fight for the Holy Land. The Europeans fought for and controlled lands in the region for about 200 years. After their fall, the Ayyubids and Mamluks held power for a couple of centuries until the Ottomans came along and ruled until after World War I. Slowing things up, between 1920 and 1948, the United Kingdom ruled Palestine for the League of Nations, known as the British Mandate. Complicating matters, the Zionist movement for the Jewish to return to their Holy Land was in full swing, an action previously supported by the UK in the Balfour Declaration in 1917. To sum it up, the Jewish were moving to the Holy Land in droves with the hopes of creating a Jewish state. The Palestinians did not appreciate mass immigration into their land, and it was up to the British to decide how to fix it. What could go wrong? In April 1920, violent Arab disturbances against the Jews in Jerusalem occurred, which came to be known as the 1920 Palestine riots. As a result of the four-day event, trust among the British, Jews, and Arabs eroded. Against the wishes of the Palestinians, the British continued to approve Zionist settlement of Palestine by holding liberal immigration policies and allowing Jewish mass immigration. The continued demographic shift alarmed the existing Palestinians. According to a 1922 census, 11% of the people living in Palestine were Jewish, and by 1947, that number had climbed to 31%. Tensions boiled over in 1936, leading to the Great Palestinian Revolt, in which the Palestinians demanded Arab independence and the end of the policy of open-ended Jewish immigration. The British responded by deploying over 100,000 soldiers and committed collective punishments on towns or families to end the revolt. Due to the British crackdown, the Palestinians were left without a local leadership, and infighting between rival families deepened rifts within the Palestinian society. In response to the revolt, the British, led by Neville Chamberlain, published the White Paper of 1939, which called for the establishment of a Jewish national home and an independent Palestinian state within 10 years, all the while restricting Jewish immigration to the area to 75,000 people over the next 5 years, and ruled that any further immigration would be ruled by the Arab majority. In 1947, the United Nations adopted Resolution 181, which recommended a partition of mandatory Palestine at the end of the British Mandate. The Jewish state was to get 56% of the land, the Arab state 42%, with the remaining 2% surrounding the cities of Jerusalem and Bethlehem to become an international zone. The Zionist leaders accepted the plan, the Arab Palestinians did not, and all independent Arab and Muslim states voted against it. The British Mandate ended at midnight on the 14th of May, 1948. The Israeli Declaration of Independence had been issued earlier that day, and by the next day, a military coalition of Arab states entered the territory. The 1948 Palestine War, often referred to as the Nakba, or catastrophe by the Palestinians, was fought between the new nation of Israel against the Palestinians in neighbors Egypt, Syria, Jordan, and Iraq. During the war, Israel was able to capture 78% of Palestine, with Jordan holding the land that is now known as the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and Egypt having control of present-day Gaza. During the war, around 700,000 Palestinian Arabs were displaced, around half the population, beginning the trend of Palestinians becoming refugees. In 1967, escalating tensions in the region led to a six-day war known as the Six-Day War. It was fought between Israel and a coalition of Arab states. In less than a week, Israel captured the rest of the area that had been part of the British Mandate of Palestine, taking the West Bank, including East Jerusalem from Jordan and the Gaza Strip from Egypt. East Jerusalem was annexed by Israel, though decades later it still has not been recognized internationally. From 1987 to 1993, the first Palestinian Intifada against Israel took place. Sparked by frustrations over occupation, it involved mass protests, civil disobedience, and clashes with the Israeli forces. The second Intifada, also known as the Al-Aqsa Intifada, began in September of 2000. It was a period of intensified Israeli-Palestinian violence, marked by suicide bombings, armed clashes, and Israeli military operations. And as I'm reading this, the Israeli-Hamas war is being fought, which began on October 7, 2023, in which Hamas, the current government in Gaza, attacked Israel, killing 1,200 Israelis and taking a few hundred more hostages. As of this writing, over 2 million people have been displaced and over 20,000 Gazans have been killed. In ongoing war and crisis, I can only pray it ends sooner than later. Let's turn to something a bit more positive, the cuisine of Palestine.
Next semester, I'll be doing better. I told my mom I'll get that.
Palestinian cuisine reflects a blend of cultures that have historically ruled or settled in the region. As a result, Palestinian cuisine has taste influences from Arabic, Persian, and Turkish culinary traditions. The national dish of Palestine is widely recognized to be moussaka, which features roasted chicken based with onions, spices, and fried pine nuts, all served on taboon bread. Besides the fact that it tastes fantastic, moussakhan's popularity stems from its simplicity and the accessibility of its ingredients. The falafel is a popular street food throughout the region, and its origin is hotly debated, though most believe it probably came from Egypt. Palestine makes them a bit different than in other places. Here it's made with chickpeas, whereas other places often use fava beans. Makhlouba is a dish made with layers of rice, vegetables such as cauliflower, eggplant, and potatoes, and either chicken or lamb. Once cooked, the dish is inverted into a servant platter, presenting a colorful tapestry of flavors. And finally, Nablus cheese was named after the West Bank city of Nablus. It's usually made with sheep's milk. It's white or yellow and rectangular in shape. Known for its salty flavor, it has a distinct texture that is grainy and slightly chewy. Let's see if we can make sense of how Palestine is governed in a simplified way, or at least as simple as I can make it. Israel has been in control of Palestine since 1967, making it an occupied territory. After a few decades of Israeli control, Israel and Palestine came together in the 90s by agreeing to the Oslo Accords, which established the Palestinian Authority. In short, the Palestinian Authority was tasked to govern parts of the West Bank and Gaza, while Israel maintained control of the lion's share of power in both occupied areas. Serious arguments and issues from both sides have stifled any agreement or cooperation between the two ever since. Today, roughly 60% of the West Bank remains under full Israeli civil and military control. Gaza and the West Bank have been under different leadership since 2007, when Hamas ousted the Palestinian Authority from power in the Gaza Strip. Founded in 1987, Hamas is a political and militant organization. Various countries and entities, including the European Union, the United States, and Israel, designate Hamas as a terrorist organization due to its involvement in the acts of violence and its refusal to recognize Israel's right to exist. In terms of the economy, Palestine faces significant challenges due to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, restrictions on movement, and the political uncertainties. The Gaza Strip in particular faces more severe economic challenges, including the blockade by Israel. Agriculture is an important part of the Palestinian economy. Prominent types of crops grown include olives, which takes up half of the land Palestine uses for agriculture. Other industries that have traditionally been important to Palestine include handicrafts and stone cutting. Palestinian handicrafts include embroidery work, pottery making, soap making, glass making, and weaving. Tourism has also become an important part of the Palestinian economy, especially in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. Highly visited places include the many historical and religious sites such as the Old City of Jerusalem and Bethlehem. Another great place to visit are the traditional markets, especially in those in the Old City of Jerusalem.
I got blessings falling on me.
Of the 14.3 million Palestinians living on this planet, well over half of them live outside of the borders of Palestine. Since the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, Palestinians have been forced to leave their homes multiple times, spreading to different countries worldwide. Apart from war-induced displacement, Palestinians have also moved abroad for reasons like job opportunities, education, and religious persecution. Since 1948, the Palestinian right of return has been a crucial issue for Palestinians in the wider Arab world. Many in the Palestinian diaspora, especially those in refugee camps, hold on to this dream. Countries outside the Palestinian territories with significant Palestinian populations include 3.2 million Palestinians living in Jordan, with 2.1 million registered as refugees. Close to 2 million Palestinians live in Israel. In the aftermath of the 1948 Israel-Palestinian War, 80% of the Palestinian population fled or were expelled. Those living in Israel are descended from the 20% who remained. Around 600,000 Palestinians live in Syria, and the largest Palestinian population outside of the Middle East is in the South American country of Chile. I never would have guessed that. With a population of 500,000 people, Palestinians began moving to Chile in the 1850s during the Crimean War, fleeing across the world due to Russia's intent to capture and control the Holy Land. Other countries in the Americas with sizable Palestinian communities include the United States, Honduras, and Guatemala. Notable people around the world with Palestinian origins include Nayib Bukele, the current president of El Salvador. His paternal grandparents were from Palestine. Chilean lawyer and human rights activist Jose Zalaquet. Canadian musicians Nasri from the band Magic, and Belly, who was born in Palestine. Salvador Nasrallah, the vice president of Honduras. American DJ Khalid, and supermodel sisters Gigi and Bella Hadid, who are Palestinian on their father's side. In telling the story of Palestine, it would be impossible to bypass East Jerusalem. Historically important for Muslims, Christians, and Jews, questions surrounding who it belongs to is still an issue. Since Israel captured it in 1967, Israel considers it a part of its sovereign territory, while many other countries, along with the United Nations, consider East Jerusalem to be occupied Palestinian territory and the future capital of Palestine. East Jerusalem is home to Old City Jerusalem, a UNESCO World Heritage Site which contains some of the most religiously important sites on the planet. At the top of the list would be the Temple Mount, known as Haram al-Sharif in Arabic. For Jews, the Temple Mount is the holiest site in Judaism. It is believed to be the location of the first and second temples. The Western Wall is the closest accessible point to the Temple Mount and is a site of prayer and pilgrimage for Jews. For Muslims, the Temple Mount is the third holiest site in Islam after Mecca and Medina. It is believed to be the spot where the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven during the night journey. Old City Jerusalem is also home to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Located in the Christian quarter of the Old City, this church is believed to be the site of Jesus Christ's crucifixion, burial, and resurrection. On a lighter note, the Dabke is a traditional folk dance that is popular in several Middle Eastern countries as well as Palestine. The dance is often performed at weddings and other festive occasions. The Dabke is typically performed in a line or a circle formation with dancers holding hands or linking arms. The dance involves rhythmic stomping, kicking, and stepping movements, often synchronized to the beat of traditional Middle Eastern music. I'll end this episode by taking a look at the issue of Israeli settlements in East Jerusalem and the West Bank, a focal point of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. These settlements, home to around 700,000 Israeli citizens and growing, keep the proposed two-state solution from ever happening by fragmenting Palestinian territory. Despite being deemed illegal under international law, much of Palestine remains under Israeli government control, complicating efforts for Palestinian self-determination. The presence of these settlements raise questions about the future of Palestine as an independent nation. As beautiful as our global community is, there are certainly some issues that need to be improved upon. Palestinians are a beautiful people who have a beautiful culture who deserve no less than what anyone deserves, a home of their own. Thanks for watching and joining us on our journey to explore the global community.